model regional cooperation.
Grupa Wyszehradzka to dumna historia.
The Visegrad Group is a proud history, but also cooperation in the field of modern technologies and digital agenda. It's about meetings at the highest political level, but also thousands of jointly implemented youth and social projects. 4 countries which are linked not only by geographical proximity and historical experience, but also common values and interests. A bold look into the future. Signature of 2 important documents, an anniversary declaration, the Krakow Declaration, identifying areas of joint initiatives and cooperation. A declaration on mutual cooperation in digital projects. And also the decision of Prime Ministers to increase the budget of the Visegrad Fund to 10 million euros annually. The Visegrad Group is a story of integration with Europe, of strengthening, of new great ambitions.
If you think that the desert is just camels and dunes, think again. The desert is a place where we can and we must grow food sustainably. Dry lands cover over 40% of the earth and are home to over 2.2 billion people. Given climate change, those numbers are likely to grow. Here at Ben-Gurion University's Blaustein Institute for Desert Research, scientists are developing solutions to some of the world's greatest problems in the field of water scarcity, food security, and clean energy.
We are located in the heart of the Israeli Negev desert. We have extremely high temperature during the summer, and Israel is unique because our deserts are just decreasing in size. And this is exactly because of our activity. We are making the desert bloom, and this is something very unique to Israel and very unique to the Blaustein Institute for Desert Research.
We check the mechanism in which plants survive in these areas, and we are trying to bring the knowledge that we are collecting here in order to make farmers in different areas grow these kind of crops with the techniques that we are developing here.
This was once seawater. Now, after desalination, it is fresh water to drink. Desalination these days provide more than 80% of what Israelis drink. Our technology is implemented in countries such as the US, Australia, Africa, and Europe as well.
And of course, there is plenty of sunshine here in the desert. Here at Ashalim Solar Thermal Power Station in Israel's Negev Desert, more than 50,000 mirrors follow the sun and reflect sunlight onto a boiler on top of a 250-meter tower. The electricity generated here will be enough to power over 120,000 homes. The desert is an incredible place. We can face global challenges together, growing more with less and leaving no one behind. If you care, share.
So we can start the discussion.
Yeah. So may I start with the introduction of, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for participating in this webinar. This is a very timely webinar. Today is, as you know, the Earth Day, and this is a day of consideration of our natural resources and our respect to our planet. This is a webinar organized by the Embassy of the Republic of Poland in Athens in the framework of the Visegrad Group presidency in cooperation with the Embassy of the State of Israel. And I would like to congratulate them for this initiative because it's very important to have the opportunity to discuss on these very important issues. We will start with the welcome remark from the Ambassador of the Republic of Poland to the Hellenic Republic, Mr. Artur Lompart. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, so we can start. Ladies and gentlemen, dzień dobry, kalispera, shalom. Welcome to the webinar, How to Save the Planet, a joint event organized by the embassies of V4 countries and the Embassy of the State of Israel to Greece. The idea of the webinar has been invented by Poland, as you said, Professor, as the current president of V4 and Israel to allow a fair discussion and exchange of views by the experts from our countries. Today is the Earth Day, the best day to discuss the ideas on saving our planet. We are very grateful that institutions and scholars from Greek academia have decided to join us in our discussion. The voice of experts has a crucial role in creating decisions, and fair and objective academic debates should be listened to by lawmakers. I want to mention inspirational role of the ambassador of Israel to Greece, Mr. Yossi Amrani. Israel is one of the world's leading countries in the field of climate innovation and in the provision of solutions to the climate crisis. I can call it as a global laboratory of good practices, including sustainable agriculture, the storage of agricultural products, water use, and reforestation. It has advanced technologies to offer in the field of renewable energy with groundbreaking solutions in energy efficiency and energy storage. Israel shares many of these technologies also with other countries through Mashaf, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, and seeks to broaden cooperation with countries in the Middle East and beyond. Now, coming back to the topic of our meeting, today, supporting economic growth while taking care of the environment seems to be a key challenge lying ahead of the EU and the whole world. The current climate change transforms the world in many ways. 18 out of the last 20 years have been substantially warmer. Extreme weather events like forest fires, heat waves, and floods are becoming more common in Europe and around the world. Higher temperatures and more intense weather events will burden the economy enormously and make it difficult for countries to produce food. It will bring irreversible changes in many ecosystems and consequently the loss of biodiversity. Let us add to this the harmful activity of ourselves, use of plastic, deforestation of natural forests to the benefit of food industry, lack of waste sorting or water waste. Climate change is a global challenge that requires a global response. Green technologies are a logical response to the resource depletion and urbanization and climate change. Their goal is to provide clean air, water, and energy. Active fight for environmental protection is our common obligation and should be in the center of interest for all stakeholders, including governments, NGOs, and academia. Poland had managed to reduce its carbon footprint by 18% since 1989. This proves our determination and efficiency of our actions in this area. However, overcoming the historical burden and transforming power sectors in our region is a long-lasting process that will require us to incur huge costs, much higher than in other developed EU countries. That's why energy transformation is a priority for Poland's current presidency of the V4. We can see the potential of energy transformation in spurring our economies after the COVID pandemic. We want the return to the right track in line with the principle of sustainable growth, following the Katowice rulebook, which sets up the basic procedures and mechanism underlying the implementation of the Paris Agreement. V4 countries working with partners with the same point of view on climate issues and similar obstacles, partners within the EU, like Greece, for example, and with non-EU partners like Israel, can make our efforts in saving the planet a real thing. So the speeches of the ambassadors should be short. So now it's time for one of the best experts to discuss, Dr. Ioannis Tzortzis, President of the Legal Experts Committee of the Just Transition Development Plan. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's an amazing opportunity for us to share our vision with you. We do have a vision as a Legal Experts Committee, as well as a country in a whole. So I would like to express my deep gratitude to yourself, to the Embassy of the Republic of Poland, to the Embassy of the State of Israel, to all the Visegrad Group for giving us the floor to share our views with you and your audience that is so, I guess, involved in this mission to save the planet. It couldn't be a better day to talk about this than today. So I won't speak with words. I would like to speak with actions, and I would like to put a presentation of all what we've been doing so far and what we have the plan of doing in the near, very short future. The thing is that we do have to deal with a black desert. It's very similar to what we saw in the very interesting video at the beginning, talking about the desert in Israel, but we do actually have deserts who have lignite mine black deserts, which we need to revive and to give them new purposes and new life. So it's very important to realize that we start from scratch, even lower than scratch. I would like to start actually it's our Greek way to decarbonization. This how I would like to see it. It's from our point of view a success story so far, and we would like it to be a success story till the end. I'm a lawyer. I'm in charge of this Legal Experts Committee, who is involved in this big experiment. I'm also an attorney at law at the Supreme Court of the Greek Regulatory Authority for Energy since 2002, and I know quite a lot about what is happening in the Greek energy sector and in European context as well. So would like to create major investment opportunities, drafting a law out of the box. And how we do that? Let's start. Let's see how the story starts. First of all, as a country who have put our goals very high, unlike the European Green Deal that puts the time limit to 2050, as the National Energy and Climate Plan, the Greek government is clearly committed to the commission of all lignite power plants by 2028, with a majority of them expected to take place by 2023. Of course, we want to support all the local economies not to lose employment and to minimize the social and environmental impact during the process. His Excellency, the Ambassador, very rightly said that it's a huge task. It doesn't involve only the environment, it involves economy, it involves society, it involves human lives. And we are very concerned to save these human lives and give them new prospect, because there is a lot of discussion about very rapid and sometimes called violent delignification in Greece, but that's not at all true. We have to deal with the matter, with the problem that goes on now for nearly 10 or more years. The delignification has started a long time ago, and we came into realizing this fact, and we try to find ways to give new optimism and new prospect to these areas. First, the Greek energy and climate plan involves at least puts very ambitious targets for reducing energy consumption and renewable energy sources share by 2030. By that time frame, we want to have at least 35% renewable share of the final gross total energy consumption, 61 to 64% renewables share of the final gross electricity consumption. We want to get 16.1 to 16.5 MTOE final energy consumption, and that means 38% improvement of the energy efficiency compared to 2007 prediction. We want to get rid of lignite as part of the electricity production process, and we want to reduce also 42% of CO2 emissions compared to 1990, and at least 55% of CO2 emissions compared to 2005. All these targets are much more ambitious than the European ones. And why we do that? Of course, we are very much aware of the situation that we have in front of us, but we want to be the first that we take advantage of all the tools that they are at our disposal, that the European Union made it to be in our disposal. That's what is happening, really. Greece, like other European countries, with local captive mines, is more dependent per capita on lignite than other countries, and affected by the transition plan more than any other EU country. We can see in this map that one of the mostly affected countries, which is through this transition process, is Germany, the Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece. We have a possible negative impact on EU local employment, which amounts to nearly 53,000 employment positions in coal power plants, 118,000 employment positions in coal mines, and 215,000 indirect EU employment positions related to coal. So we have 450,000 jobs at stake. You understand what this means. And of course, today is the Earth Day, and we need to talk about environment, but environment is so closely related to economy and to society, much more than we could ever imagine. We have 5 basic principles for the Greek vision. We want to focus on labor-intensive industries to create new job opportunities. That's in accordance with EU policy objective of Smarter Europe. We want leveraging of innate advantages of the affected regions in accordance with Greener Europe. To ensure speedy transition, we have a say of short strategy. The quickest we do it, the less impact that we have on society and economy. We want a more connected Europe. We want to promote not only environmental sustainability, but social sustainability towards a more social Europe. And of course, it's not going to be possible to do that if we don't integrate modern technology and promote entrepreneurial spirit throughout all these new activities, and a Europe closer to its citizens. Behind Earth, behind environment, behind economy, behind society is humans. You should never forget this. The Greek master plan, which sets actually the frame, and as you can see, it's like a new Parthenon. It's the Parthenon of the new Greece, as we call it, is a Greek master plan, vision of the next day. We want sustainable socio-economic development, leveraging regions' competitive advantages to drive economic growth, improve quality of life for its citizens. And how we do that? We base this Parthenon on 5 basic pillars: clean energy, smart agricultural production, sustainable tourism, industry and trade, technology and education. And of course, these pillars have to be funded, have to be based on physical and digital infrastructure, reskilling of human capital, guidance for entrepreneurship and incentives, and land repurposing. We have 5 growth pillars and 4 key enablers. This master plan, because better regulation is another part of this experiment, we put it on public consultation that's necessary to get the views of the people affected. So this has gone through the Greek parliament in early December after 39 days of public consultation, where many interesting insights have been drawn. The vision for the next day will be promoted with public-private and public-private investments partnerships. That's a threefold way to achieve our object, our vision. For the ones of you that you don't know, Western Macedonia is set in northwest of Greece, just south of North Macedonia, which is saying that has expressed interest in working close with us, because as you very well know, this is not just a Greek issue, it's a regional issue, it's a European issue, it's a global issue. So, talking about Western Macedonia, our vision is to create a center for production and research in clean energy with diversified economic model. The current situation in Western Macedonia in 2020 is to have lignite-based energy production. You have very limited industrial activity apart from lignite. You have underutilized perspective of tourist activity. And you know what this means in Greece, since it's one of the major tourist destinations in the world. And we have focused production on PDO products. This is what we want to leave behind. Our vision for Western Macedonia by 2028 is to have clean energy production and a research center related to clean energy of around 2.5 gigawatts, mainly coming from photovoltaics. We want to create a modern industry and transit center in the Balkans, because I don't know whether you understand, but the geographical place where Western Macedonia is based is very central in the Balkans. We want to make it a specialized tourist destination where energy tourism could be a very good option. And of course, we want to give the opportunity that dynamic crops for exportable products will be cultivated and give new life to this completely ruined and deserted black deserts. Talking in numbers and the projects, we're talking about 11 major projects, estimated to mobilize around 2 billion in new investments in the region. We talk about, like I said, photovoltaic parks and Greek hydrogen, energy storage facilities, field of energy research, where you have an estimated investment of 1.5 billion. We want to create an industrial park, establishment of waste management unit, biomass processing center of about 200 million euros, a smart agricultural production units of the latest technology. In this respect, Israel, I'm sure, has a lot to teach us, and we look forward to our cooperation with such a dynamic and eventful process and way of doing things. And wine tourism ecosystem, up to the standards of Northern Italy. We want to create a state-of-the-art physical rehabilitation clinic with public-private partnerships from public entities, around 60 million. Talking about megalopolis, that is situated not very far from Athens. That's in Peloponnese. That's in the area of Arcadia, as you probably know. Our vision, again, is taking all this coal-based energy network, limited industrial production, unknown tourist destination, small agricultural production of specific products, to a new, completely new situation of diversified and robust green energy profile of about 1 gigawatt of photovoltaics to restart industry in competitive sectors of the economy, to make it an ideal destination for those looking in adventure, and to cultivate exportable products and development of feed and livestock production. Again, the Israeli and whoever else in Europe and in the world experience is extremely valuable to us. Talking numbers, we're talking about photovoltaic parks, around 250 million euros. We want to create a standard pharmaceutical industry for around 90 million euros, intelligent livestock and animal feed, smart agricultural units for around 40 million, original adventure, entertainment, education, theme park, 40 million, and other public investments. We want to make it a public administration center, since it's very close to Athens, to Greek capital, and we want to give this chance to the area as well. These investments can create employment for the directly affecting the locally unemployed workforce. The main problem, as His Excellency Ambassador of the Republic of Poland said in the beginning, is unemployment. And unemployment is already there. People have started about 10 years now to leave the area and to leave Greece. We have a new wave of immigrants, of economic immigrants, and that's unacceptable for a European country of 2021. So we want to tackle this. This process is ongoing. The lignite mines and the lignite plants are closing down. Very recently, the Greek Public Power Corporation announced that they may close all the lignite plants by 2025. This means 3 years earlier than estimated. This creates a completely new situation we need to run, not only walk, we want to run not in a marathon, but like we run for 100 meters sprint. We have to run a marathon with a sprint rhythm, if you understand what I mean. We want to create new jobs. We want to lose more jobs in the process, but we want to actually contravene this with creating many more. So we have the estimates of 8,000 total vacancies from the most mature projects. And this can mitigate the expected job loss from the decommissioning of the plants and mines. We want to redeploy workforce, and the need for reskilling is identified in three main sectors of specialization: horticulturalists, agronomists, winemakers, farmers, stock breeders, catering, tourism professionals, other administrative staff. Of course, we talk about, like I said, sprint. So we need to have a rapid implementation via drafting of out-of-the-box legislation by the Just Transition Development Plan Legal Experts Committee. Because, you know, putting ideas on paper is one thing, having economists giving us very interesting economic analysis is another thing, but putting them into legal acts, binding illegal acts, is a completely different process. So we want to institutionalize incentives, we want to create special urban plans, we want to do a lot of project financing, we want to get involved in land restoration, to mobilize public investment, and to have fast-track licensing processes. A lot of incentives and targeting is involved in this. We want to have 15 specialized incentives, and these are going to attract new production processes to maintain the existing operation where we wanted to maintain it and to support individuals. And of course, there's another way of defining incentives and targeting to take into account all the communication that has proceeded with local entities, potential investors, executives of the involved services. The main goal is to make all available sources of funding available to us, including the three pillars of just transition mechanism that we see in a moment, as well as other national and European sources. We want incentives that will mobilize and activate specific investment projects. We are at the point that we cannot talk in theory anymore. We have to talk specifically and in praxis, in action. We have a big collection of funding tools. This is like what we call it, the Just Transition Development Plan funding pyramid. At the top of it is the Resilience Recovery Fund. Under it is the Just Transition Fund. Of course, there is InvestEU, the European Investment Bank, the European Regional Development Fund, the ESF, national resources, the Agricultural Fund, and of course, private equity. So there is a lot of money going around. We have to realize that, but have to make the best use of this. Because as other developing countries or developed ones know that it's not only the tools that you have at your disposal, but this, of course, is how you use them. And there is always the responsibility and the problem to make the best use of these tools. You can see here how these different funding tools are combined with priorities. I'm not going to get into much of this detail, but of course, my presentation is going to be available to all of you, and we're going to welcome any input, any ideas, any suggestions, and we're going to be extremely grateful in case we have this feedback. We're talking about these different tools. We want, of course, to mobilize fostering and promoting entrepreneurship. We want to achieve energy transition and climate neutrality. We want to strengthen the agricultural sector. We want to repurpose land uses. We want to empower human capital, to create new transport infrastructure because there is none or almost none. And of course, we want to integrate territorial investments in a way like smart cities. This is how you can see the funding by area and source. And here is how we see the full utilization of all available sources of funding. This is how we estimate the initial share that every tool will contribute. We talk about commercial loans, equity, subsidies, loans on favorable terms. And this actually is the leverage of commercial bank loans and equity. And the utilization of just transition mechanism, which I said earlier, is actually has the aim to not only actually for an immediate exhaustion of subsidies, but more of complete use or utilization of all of its three pillars, enabling integration and implementation on an increasing number of investments. Talking about lignite, we shouldn't forget that we're not talking about only Macedonia, West Macedonia, megalopolis, but we're talking about Aegean Islands and Crete. In the European regulation, we're not talking only about lignite, but we're talking also about just transition in areas like the Greek islands, which are non-interconnected, that very heavily dependent on power plants that use crude oil. We have to change that. We want to create green islands. Greco Islands is an initiative that is going to be actually mobilized in the whole structure of this process, and we want to change this situation for good, because it's not only environmental issue, it's a financial economic issue, because in order to keep the price of electricity down in those Aegean Islands and Crete, we need to have a lot of state subsidy, and this completely distorts free competition. So we want to change this. So we have to get into transition process that is going to be outlined and going to be targeted to the most negatively affected areas. We're going to assess the transition challenges for each of the identified territories. And of course, as I said, better regulation involves public consultation, monitoring, and evaluation measures. And the body is responsible for coordinating and legislating the implementation of our plan. The public consultation of the two territorial plans of Western Macedonia and Megalopolis lasted more than a month, from February to March 2021. We got a lot of input. Let's talk about the transition process. We're going to have, according to our National Energy and Climate Plan, a forward-looking strategy. Actually, we're going to eliminate the share of lignite electricity production by 2028. We're going to decommission of lignite plants and the closure of mines. And the Greek, let's say, innovation in this process, in this plan, is actually to transfer the lands of the PPC, of the Public Power Corporation, to the Greek state. Because you understand that in those lignite areas, the lands belong to the Greek PPC. And these are going to be transferred to Greek state, and the Greek state is going to be the body responsible, special SPV, to implement the new land uses. We're going to have restoration areas within the decarbonization zones according to new purposes. So we talk about a special purpose vehicle of the Greek state that's going to be responsible for rehabilitation and repurposing of those lands. Of course, we want to have new special planning. We have already new law. We have RRF funds of nearly 300 million. We have to prioritize the land for rehabilitation. And the BBC is only going to be the intermediary body of utilizing this mechanism. This is our plan. We have a roadmap clearly set. As you can see, is forward-looking roadmap. Most of decommissioning, allocation of lands, procedure for restoration of areas within the decarbonization zones, supporting actions are going to be lasting a bit more, but the first three main categories are going to be completed by 2023. So you see what I mean by saying sprint. The transition challenges. We have declining sectors, we have transformative sectors. We want to give, like I said, new life, new breath for economic business activity, for population and employment, for environment and health. And talking about governance, we want to have a partnership agreement. We're not doing this by force or by state authority. We want everybody involved to gain. It's going to be a win-win situation. So we're going to have a partnership agreement with all the members involved in this, the competent local authorities, the chambers, federations, scientific centers. Of course, we're going to have monitoring and evaluation. And of course, we're going to have coordinating and legislating bodies. And talking about this, we have a governing committee in charge of all this procedure. We have a steering committee in which Mr. Moussourilis, ex-minister, is in charge and plays a very crucial central role in this whole experiment. We have the legal experts committee, of which I'm the chairman, and they have the technical committee, and you have a program monitoring committee and subcommittees, and state-owned purpose vehicle. To give you an idea, this ecosystem is going to be looking like this. And you can see that the executive body is central in this, like the steering committee, all of them under the governing committee. And to thank you for your attention and for your patience, I want to give you a very short idea of what we're talking about, because, okay, one thing is talking, another thing is seeing. So these are the black deserts I've been talking to you about. The left one is Amindeo mine, is in Western Macedonia. The second, the middle one is Ptolemaida mine, is again in Central Macedonia, and the right one is Megalopolis in Peloponnese, in Arcadia, like you said earlier. So this is how these areas look at the moment from Google Map. This is how we want to make it look very shortly. We want to have areas, the black areas is photovoltaics. We want to have lakes like the blue here. We want to have new forests. We want to have recreation, park areas. Of course, we want to have enterprises again. So we create industrial enterprise zones. This is Amindeo, like I said, in Western Macedonia. This is Ptolemaida, how it's going to be looking like. With photovoltaics, with industrial zones, with lakes, recreation areas, rural areas where you can cultivate, and forest and agroforest pastures. And this megalopolis. Again, the same idea. The new land uses. We're talking about deserts, black deserts, which we have the vision to make them green paradises. This is something very interesting, which I came across when I was part of the Green Project NGO, when we traveled from Athens to Cape Town. I came across to this power plant, which is a decommissioned thermoelectric power plant, which has been transformed into an art space as a symbol of the fall of the apartheid in Soweto, Johannesburg, because it was actually based in Soweto, in Johannesburg, and giving electricity, producing electricity to other parts of Johannesburg, mainly white populated areas. So I want this to be as a symbol for our vision. We want to stop this polluting, this social distorting and economic distorting process, and to give new life to people and to the environment. This is the way that you can actually become a part of this procedure. We welcome any idea, any proposal, either coming from investors or public entities or individuals. There are two channels. One channel is through Enterprise Greece, which we're very grateful that is our very crucial mate in this. Is supervised by Greek Minister of Foreign Affairs and is in charge of promoting and supporting private investments in Greece. So that's one channel. There is a special task force created in this Enterprise Greece service, and you have a specific account where you can send your ideas. Another way is talking directly to us, the JTDP technical committee, which receives investment proposal and development plans, ideas from whoever entity. And of course, you have all the information available to you in our website. I'm so thankful to your patience, and I'm looking forward to your contribution. And again, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. We are very enthusiastic, as you probably realized, and we believe in what we're doing. We love what we're doing. And we're here to assist you 24/7. We're not a normal Greek public service. We're like a team of commandos here. So we're very happy for you to join us. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tzortzis. It was very interesting and wonderful presentation. I would like to thank you especially because you mentioned also the challenges we face as governments and the impact on society, especially on workforce, unemployment, and the life of local communities. So it was very interesting, and thank you very much. Now it's time to start the discussion. As the ambassadors, we decided that it should be a forum for a discussion of experts and scholars, not the ambassadors. So now I would like to invite to lead our discussion Professor Nikos Theodosiou, the eminent professor of the Aristotelian University of Thessaloniki and chair of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Black Sea. Professor, well, the floor is yours, and we are here as diplomats, we are here to listen to you and your ideas. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's really an honor for me to be here and to try to help this the development of this wonderful initiative. We all know that today is Earth Day. The topic of Earth Day this year is restoration, how to restore our planet. And we have, sorry, we have 2 sessions of discussion today with excellent scientists, and I'm looking forward to listening to their presentations. Our first session is about advanced technologies in the service of environmental protection. And the second session is about climate change and how to create opportunities through policy and support. They both lie within the framework of, within the topic of this year's Earth Day, trying to restore what has happened all these years and how to establish the future of our planet. As His Excellency mentioned, I'm professor at the Department of Civil Engineering at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, but also the chair of a network by the United Nations. It's called Sustainable Development Solutions Network. It covers the wider area of the Black Sea, of the Balkan countries, all the countries all around the Black Sea up to Azerbaijan in the Caspian, thus 12 countries. It is hosted by my university and have the honor of chairing this network. These networks operate under the auspices of the Secretary General of the United Nations, and their goal is to find new solutions, new ideas, innovative ideas for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is another reason that I'm very happy that I will have the opportunity to moderate this session, because there are a lot of ideas, new proposals that will help us protect the environment, reverse climate change, adapt to the consequences of climate change. And we are going to discuss these proposals that will be presented by our esteemed scientists that we have today with us. So with no further ado, I will start with the first session. As I said, this advanced technologies in the service of environmental protection. Our first speaker is Dr. Shimrit Maman. She's research associate and director for the Earth and Planetary Image Facility at the Ben-Gurion University in Israel. So, Dr. Maman, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for putting all of this together in this very special day. So I'm going to just start off because we are on a very tight schedule. Basically, United Nations has realized the need and the ability of satellite technology as a key player in the next decades, not only for monitoring, but also for restoration and policy implementations. What we do in Ben-Gurion University of the Negev in the United Nations, as well in the UN Spider Regional Support Office in Israel, is we implement all kinds of algorithms and new technologies in this very important cycle for achieving SDGs in general, and specifically SDG 13. Our research lab is affiliated first and foremost with research students of multidisciplinary background, all dealing with some kind of aspects of remote sensing. We do have our own ground receiving satellite station at Ben-Gurion, and a lot of equipment in order to support climate research, such as a meteorological station and all other sensors that could be validated on ground. Besides that, we do serve as NASA's Regional Planetary Image Facility. We have a lot of education and public outreach that implement both the science and technology of climate change to the younger and older audience, which are not part of the university. And as I said before, we are the 25th Regional Support Office of UN Spider, dealing with disaster management in general and climate action and climate management specifically. So to target SDG 13, And not only, we do have to partner up and and use several satellites and several technologies in order to do so. Lucky for us, this technology has been present for the last 60 years. And our research is not limited to a sensor specific or one topic. We have all kinds of data around the globe and on other planets. For example, the Central Asian dune dynamics or arid land vegetation dynamics as well as implementing very advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence in order to highlight these phenomena. Bringing all these together, we could achieve, using all these algorithms and technologies, we could use these Earth observation and remote sensing algorithms we develop in order to implement it directly on specific topics like monitoring CO2 or methane or other pollutants, as well as indirect measurements such as Aeolian geomorphology, dune direction, and their dynamics. 4 years ago, we implemented and started a new project that we're very proud of. It's called BGUSat, Ben Gurion University Satellite. And the thing is that I did mention briefly that Earth observations are already present for over 60 years. This is an example for the television infrared observation satellite from 1960. So the big question is, what's changing in the past years with this great satellite technology? And the answer is this great trend in miniaturization. The satellites are getting smaller and smaller. If we started off with these used satellites at the weight of 8,000 kilograms, and we see in recent years that these satellites are getting smaller and smaller, and so small that we today have also even smaller satellites than this. I'm going to show you mine in a sec. And I left the people here just for scale, just in order to understand how this is changing. So since the 1990s, we see this trend of satellites getting smaller, which enables the more satellites to be launched because of the lower weight and the ability to launch more satellites. And if we look at the forecasts and the historical data from 2014 to 2018, we do see that most of the satellites that were launched were used for Earth observation and remote sensing. And this was, of course, because we had a really large constellation of planets, all these over 200 satellites, nano satellites that were launched at once. And we see that this trend is also predicted for the future years. Earth observations and remote sensing is the main application of nano satellites. And when we talk about nano satellites, it's pretty hard to imagine how small it is, but this is BGUSat just before it was launched. And we're talking about a 10 by 10 by 30 centimeter satellite. So you can't really realize the size of the satellite from this image. So I'm going to show this image of me holding not the real satellites because it's in space. So it's already operative for 4 years, but this is the size of a satellite. This is a CubeSat, a 3-unit CubeSat in a low Earth orbit. And currently it's the only nano satellite in space that has a shortwave infrared imager on it. This is a joint venture for both the Israeli aerospace industry, Ben Gurion University, and the Israeli Space Agency as well. So what does our satellite do and what do we do with it? So basically this was launched as a climate and meteorological research satellite. We take all kinds of pictures. We have already 6,000 images of BGUSat around the globe. And we study cloud coverage and storm observation, CO2 concentrations, terrain transformations. Because of its spectral band of the shortwave infrared, we can differentiate between clouds and snow and determine soil and vegetation moisture content. There was an attempt to monitor wildfire, And there is a great group in Tel Aviv University, along with Ben Gurion University, that also studies the Earth air globe. So we have all these research team working. Now, this started off as a technology demonstration. So our main goal was to compare it to the bigger satellites and with the ones that are also in a higher orbit. And these are two images of BGUSat and NOAA satellite. So the left image is the BGUSat and the right image is of NOAA. They were both taken on the month of May, not on the same day. But the thing is that we wanted to show this technology demonstration and see if our satellite could do the job of a big one. And we actually get a higher spatial resolution. The pixel size is 600 meters on the ground. Temporal resolution could reach to between 1 and 4 days, depending on the orbit and what, depending on the exact angle we needed. We do have an altitude control center a unit in the satellite, on board the satellite itself, so we could move it around and get the image in nadir and up to 20 degrees, which provide us with great images for that matter. So we were able to show this technological demonstration, to produce science with this small satellite. And another thing, because I have another minute, I just want to highlight another project we are doing currently in Israel. And it started off in Israel, but it's already international. This is called the She Space International Program. And what we do is we have girls. We started off in Israel, then we expanded to these 4 countries, Germany, United States, Brazil, and Israel. And currently we've expanded also to Spain, Togo, South Korea, and Peru. And we have girls coming in our research labs and conducting academic research in a teamwork frame, both simulating international collaboration in a very fun way, learning about satellite technologies, operating satellites. For the Israeli group, they operate BGUSat, but the scientific question they're dealing with is actually climate change. So each of these groups has to study climate change in their own country. They have to collaborate and get the global perspective of climate change, and all the groups are using state-of-the-art satellites, and by doing so, they get introduced to a lot of different satellites by each country as well. So these are our great girls in fieldwork, operating also sensors on the ground. They have access to everything. This year, because of the pandemic, we did most of the work online, and this was achievable due to the remote sensing properties as well. So thank you very much, and if there's any questions, I will be more than happy to take later on. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the very, very interesting presentation, and for the excellent, congratulations for the excellent work that you are doing. That's really amazing, and I really enjoyed your initiative to support women's participation in research and science. This is that we still need to empower, and we still need to pursue. I hope that in a few years we will not have to talk about that, because it will not be necessary. But I'm afraid it is still necessary. So congratulations, and this was a really excellent and inspiring presentation and work. So we're moving to the next presentation by Dr. Joanna Tzortzis. Sorry. I hope I pronounced it nearly right.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. She's an expert at the Institute of Environmental Protection at the National Research Institute of the Warsaw University of Technology. So, Joanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will share my presentation. Okay. So good afternoon, and again, thank you for invitation. So, well, we live in changing world, so the topic of our discussion is very important. And to cope with environmental protection in the context of changing climate, we need information. And this means observations of climate properties, greenhouse gas concentrations, and climate projections, which is probably most important. We need this information to predict and potentially reduce environmental risks, such as problems with water resources due to changing precipitation in many regions in the world. Also, ecosystem degradation is very often due to temperature changes, biodiversity loss, air quality. But this risk can be also understood as potential difficulties in the development of particular sectors, for instance, agriculture, or energy production, or tourism. So this is the case actually of many countries. And to reduce possible losses, to reduce the risk of inaction, in fact, we can undertake some mitigation measures, and this could be the reduction of fossil fuel use or application of green technologies. But in fact, we need to develop also adaptation strategies and to assess vulnerability and potentially to reduce this vulnerability, and in the same time to increase adaptive capacity. To adapt efficiently, we need the information about the future climate. So to make optimal decisions, in fact, and to develop effective mitigation strategies, we have to have some information of possible strategies on how to assume the changes of greenhouse gases, and also we need the feedback how this content of greenhouse gases will impact climate change in the future. So this is why we need advanced observations and computational techniques. And this is actually the starting point for all other considerations. So new satellites provides gigabytes of environmental data every day, and advanced atmospheric models are used to process this data to produce an up-to-date information about the weather and climate. And for the future, there is a continuous activity of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which produce assessment report every 6 years, more or less, and most up-to-date report is underway. So we are waiting for sixth assessment report. Then there is a number of regional activities for Euro-Atlantic region. This is Euro-Cordex initiative, where a number of regional climate models were applied. And further, this serves the base for national downscaled projections. And the European Copernicus Service, namely Copernicus Climate Change Service, is a great source of climate information and climate datasets. And the aim of this service is to support adaptation and mitigation policies. And just today, the report on European state of climate has been issued, and it's The report is available through Copernicus Climate Change Service web portal. This visualization is taken from Copernicus Climate Change Service, and it shows changes of monthly average temperature over last 40 years. So what we can learn from this plot? In blue, there is a temperature at the end of 20th century, while the reddish color shows temperature in the beginning of 21st century. So, of course, there is some interannual variability, but in general, it's quite clear that that we do have global warming, that annual temperature was higher in 21st century. And then, I'm sorry, I would like to switch to the next slide. Then we can ask the question on how these trends will look like in the future. So based on IPCC work, it's highly probable that we can expect further changes, and these changes may accelerate in the future. Of course, it depends on socioeconomic scenario assumed and greenhouse gas concentration, which is relevant to the technologies. But it's quite clear that we should expect temperature rise, also rise of the sea level, and the decrease of sea ice content. And just a quick example of our work. So we have prepared climate change scenarios for Poland, and this is downscaled Eurocordex projection. The aim was to provide coherent information for all administrative units, and also it was dedicated to 8 sectors. And apart from temperature and precipitation, because this is very often used in many studies, we have prepared also irradiance and wind speed projections for the future, and potential energy for solar and wind farms, since we are we should have reliable information on abilities to develop green technologies. And our stakeholders asked also for some additional parameters, so at that moment we worked on humidity and snow cover. And all data sets are publicly available via web portal. And this was just the first step, because in parallel, the model for risk assessment was developed. And this includes impact and vulnerability analysis. And this sectoral risk will be also publicly available, so we hope it will help in development of adaptation strategies. So, just to conclude, I believe that to plan technological changes, we need advanced computational techniques, and these are climate models and risk assessment models. So, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. That was, again, a very interesting presentation. It's true that we need to invest more in collecting and analyzing and understanding data, so that we can understand the mechanisms of climate change, and we be able to take the necessary mitigation and adaptation measures to face what is definitely coming in the next years. I mean, it is recorded, but I'm afraid that things will worsen through time if we don't take the necessary mitigation and adaptation measures always based on data and on scientific analysis. So thank you very much. And we are moving to the next presentation by Mrs. Katerina Belabradova, the Director General for Environmental Policy of the Ministry of Environment of the Slovak Republic. Mrs. Belabradova.
Thank you for invitation for this special Advanced Technologies event from Ministry of Slovakia, Ministry of Environment. Let me share my presentation. I hope you can see it by now.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So the special day is Earth Day. So it's a great topic how to start in a more advanced way and more effective and efficient way to save our planet, I think. Nowadays, we don't have enough time to wait till we find new ways in manual way of saving our planet, I think. So the advanced technologies are the right thing to do for our environment. So I would like to present these topics that we are doing in Slovakia regarding the possible solutions, and we try to do our best with our research organizations within Ministry of Environment as well. And we are very keen on advancing also towards machine learning and also towards artificial intelligence, as it was already said by Israel, that this is real advanced way how to protect our planet. So even from a report of World Meteorological Organization regarding that the three hottest 2020 was one of the three hottest years on record, is very alerting us to go ahead. I would like to, and we have to be really aware of the impact on the planet and develop better and faster technologies and policies based on research, but not only research, but research has to be also connected with ministries and policymakers to achieve the real goals that we reach, not only SDG goals, but we reach also the European Green Deal within European Union, that we will be the example how to also get together towards CO2 emissions neutrality and emissions neutrality and zero pollution. So I think also good examples that within organizations from Slovakia and other also startups and private sector, we already collaborate with the European Space Agency. And we have also done some work regarding connecting startups with academia and also with the Ministry of Environment as such. I would like to present you some PEX projects that we have already done. One of them is NaturaSat. It's really a good way of connecting ministry with startups. So this project was really effective monitoring and identification of Natura 2000 habitats. And yeah, so this project is going also on, and we are using drones even to get better resolution of the satellite images. We had also done mapping and monitoring of the forests. With Slovak Academy of Science in collaboration with also startups, and we on optical Sentinel-2 satellite images. So the goal was also to set up algorithms, and these algorithms can be certainly reused for the further application in different areas, not even in Slovakia, but also might be in other countries. But still, this is first. These are the first project that I mentioned. Also, the University of Jozef Čafarik University in Košice did a project on simulating the cooling effect within the urban greenery, and also detecting urban hotspots to be able to detect where the where it's necessary cool down the urban areas. So other project also that we did is with our environmental agency was Copernicus land monitoring service that we also use, like it was mentioned in Polish presentation. We used land cover mapping and land use mapping. We used also this already ready information on detecting loss of woods in Slovakia according to evolution of from 2006 till 2016 on a 6 years basis. I would say that we would need more frequent and on basis of shorter periods to have this kind of alerting systems in the future. That could help act on time and protect the forest even better, and not really based on longer periods when it's too late. Because the climate change is not waiting till we find faster solutions and apply algorithms that can be done by artificial intelligence. Then other project I would like to present is Corin Land Cover. Was also used for Foresights project that we are also collaborating closely with European Commission GRC Joint Research Center, and this is how we could change our countryside that is on the left side to the right one, and model better scenarios for the future of ecosystems, better ecosystems development and protect biodiversity. On the right-hand side, you have Foresight's test scenario that is the best for ecosystems, of course. And this would be very great for ecotourism, and also we could get better ecotourism sites for foreigners, and where they could meet even our protected species as a bear or wolf, that is by today signed by our minister as a protected species and cannot be hunted anymore. So it's on the IUCN list now. So and then Copernicus climate change services we use to support decisions and on adaptation measures and modeling of climate scenarios. And we have our Slovak Hydrometeorological Institute has that is organization under Ministry of Environment has also developed drought watch. They're also working with EUMETSAT data and with Aladdin model that they have developed. So people could really see how the climate change attacks the land that is getting dry, and also that is not good for forests, that there are more fires detected last years as before. So we can really see the climate change happening now, and we will not wait till it's too late. Mapping bathymetry did our Slovak water management organization. So we are using also bathymetric measures, as you might see, and also for Gabčíkovo dam, we did 3D laser scanning also with LiDAR and drones data. Yeah. Then we have radar monitoring of deformations, because Slovakia is the roads are also very can be very steep and going between the mountains. One of the project was also to detect deformation of roads and the risk of getting erosion that might happen by falling rocks and deformation of the roads. So yeah, so we used also this radar images. Now the Čuňovo was actually, this is a dam as well. So we were using here the measures for with INSAR method. Just I have to go very fast because we have a lot of slides. So actually, we also do with Water Research Institute different checks on quality of raw water, and also we have done research also on water abstraction points and on basis of 10 years. So, and also level of groundwater bodies. There was a monitoring which water bodies are with different water qualities and so on. So this is doing also Water Research Institute that is based in Bratislava. There is also one of the research organizations under the Ministry of Environment. I show you examples of procedure, but maybe it's more for the longer discussion and with experts, but very brief. We just monitored which on this slide is actually on which areas is drinking water protected, and also to check what is the quality of water in the red areas that are protected, and to protect it even better. In order to protect even better, then we know what's happening in that area. So you see that these advanced technologies and in situ data in combination with other spatial information that is available is very useful. And doing a GIS analysis on the top of it, we can really see how Slovakia looks like in sense of chemical status of different groundwater bodies. So as you might see, the area in the west is very poor, and from the analysis from satellite images, also you can get, and also in situ data and GIS, you can get a better overview of different information that is needed to classify whole country if there is high or poor risk of getting different bacteria or sulfate or ammonium in the water bodies. So there is also a program that we collaborate together with USA, and it's called GLOBE. If you go to GLOBE Slovakia, then .sk, then you will find more information on this project. We are also doing educational workshops for young people to be aware that environmental issues are very important, not only for nature, but also for health of the people, and also for informing people about what's going on with what they are drinking, with which water are they drinking, which kind of air are they breathing, and what food they are eating. So it has impact on a life of each of us as such. So we have also in the research evolved that Slovakia is in collaboration with US and South Korea in developing supercomputer, and to be able to go ahead with AI and be able to use AI on the supercomputers, because the technology has to go ahead if we want to stop climate change soon. So, and yeah, it's a prototype and it's world's smallest and fastest, greenest general purpose chip with wide applications in hyperscale data centers. And it's one of the greenest way how to also store data, because the plan, let's say the blockchain of this project is not only to have super fast computer, but also the energy used for whole system and whole blockchain should be also from sustainable energy resources and renewable energy, such as green hydrogen, that is future. I think instead of using natural resources as lithium for batteries and as such. So this is my presentation, and thank you for your attention. And we are looking for collaboration with other countries that has really good presentation or will have great presentation of best examples how to implement research to be able to stop climate change as soon as possible. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with us all this information, all these activities. It's really important to have the public sector, and especially the ministries of environment, support this common struggle to face and to tackle with climate change and environmental impacts. Obviously, the Ministry of Environment of the Slovak Republic is a very active one in various sectors, both in monitoring, analyzing, research and education. Yes, I'm not sure you can hear me. Yes. So it's really nice to have you, to have all these activities, to know about all these activities of the Ministry of Environment of the Slovak Republic. Thank you very much. And the last presentation for this session is by Mr. Martin Matei, a research fellow of AMO Research Center. Martin, what is yours?
Thank you, Nikolaos. AMO stands for the Association for International Affairs. That's the name. And so thank you, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues and friends from the Visegrad 4. I'm now talking after my predecessors have presented some wonderful insights into the satellite data and how it helps us to perhaps better understand the surface of the Earth and to protect the environment. But I would like to perhaps talk about the environmental protection from a different perspective. Given the occasion, I would like to think about the protection of planet Earth from the human excessive and destructive use of natural resources. Now, every day we use technologies that our forefathers deemed impossible, indeed diabolic 200 or 300 years ago, like fridges, virtual reality headsets, nanosatellites, right? Or the infrastructure that allows us to convene on Zoom while being thousands of miles away. There are things that you and me thought impossible, but that continue to emerge every week. There are new exciting technologies, new innovative solutions to our problems. And it's increasingly harder to follow the news about them. There's just so many. So we sometimes perhaps forget how advanced the technology is already. And many of these solutions can be utilized to reduce our environmental impact on the planet. So first of all, some can be used to reduce our demand for materials. Now, the idea of recycling is not novel itself. Nature's economy is circular, and we still use some historically proven methods like growing cereals for our nourishment and using food waste from the cereals to feed livestock, whose own waste we use as manure to produce even more cereals and repeat the process, right? So that is circular economy. Today, thanks to advanced technologies, we are beginning to have the means to take circular economy to perfection. Today, we can use the food waste to make plastic packaging. And after we use the plastic packaging, ideally several times, we can physically and chemically treat it to make new chattels, like the jacket I'm wearing now. There are new exciting ways of water treatment too. A research institute called Katrin, based in Olomouc, Czech Republic, with some highly cited researchers among them, leads an international project which uses nanostructures in order to create awesome temperatures up to 600 degrees Celsius from regular sunlight. So these nano ovens, billions of them, can serve to distill water out of seawater or sewage water. The scientists claim stunning efficiency of 68%, and were able to reduce the cost of the technology by using titanium, which is a considerably less precious metal than, say, gold, silver, or platinum. And there are other applications of these nano ovens, as they call them, as a thin film on solar panels that catalyzes the energy conversion, for instance. So that would be just like this one group of technologies that help us nowadays to perhaps be closer to the circular economy of tomorrow. A second way of using high technology to reduce our environmental impact on the planet is, of course, the generation of energy from renewable energy sources, as well as the nuclear reaction rather than fossil fuels. Again, we did use natural elements before, wind and water to power our mills, springs from the Earth's core to heat up our pools. But now we can generate this, all of this energy in unthinkable quantities. And for surprising sources too. There are some experiments with air vibrations, bacteria, algae, or electricity from the shade during the day and from the cold from the night sky. We now have solar panels that do not invade land, but are themselves parts of roads or structures, including roof tiles and windows. We have in our hands software that can automatically distribute energy from places with lesser demand to places with higher demand. And we could continue like this almost indefinitely. We develop fusion reactors that simulate conditions on the sun and so can generate previously unthinkable amounts of energy, and at the same time split even the most dangerous toxic waste to individual atoms, which takes us back to the question of rounding our value chains in circular economy. Many people see sustainable future as a technological problem, but with this very brief talk, I wanted to invite you to think about sustainable future as the problem of imagination. Do we have what it takes to imagine a world, a new world, a sustainable civilization based on circular economy and renewable energy? And using these advanced technologies, can we make that happen? So these are maybe some questions for discussion. And again, thank you for holding this event.
Thank you, Martin. That was a very interesting approach. Thank you for giving us a glimpse of the future and of the present and the future. And through this very much needed approach of the circular economy, circularity is in our everyday lives, and we need to take advantage of that. And linear economy is dead for many years now, and we need to have a very different approach on circularity. We are a bit out of time, but I think I will pose one question to whoever of the to respond. You presented research activities and innovations, new approaches, very, very interesting things. But what do you think are the challenges and probably the barriers for further advancement of environmental protection technologies? Do you see any barriers in front of you? Do you see any new challenges that you need to face? If anyone would like to respond, welcome.
I'm going to respond.
Please.
Okay. Unless Joanna, if you want to respond, that's perfectly fine. You're on mute.
You can start.
Okay, so I'm going to lead my answer and you're going to follow because that's your field. I think it's not a matter of technology, but rather a matter of policy. If we will be able to get united around the policy and bring all the scientific community and governments into one table. Targeting climate change, I think we're going to be in a much better place, because currently we are advancing very much in the technology, but what's setting us back now is the policy. And Joanna, you would probably back me up on this.
Well, I fully agree. So there are many good ideas, and there is really technological development. However, it should be common effort, because we do have the knowledge, right? And it's so hard to translate what we know into some new policy, and it's also difficult because well, I'm dedicated also to air quality. It's so hard to combine air quality policy and climate policy, although it seems it should be coordinated effort, right? I mean, reduction of greenhouse gases and reduction of pollutants. And it's even to get reasonable agreement for combining air quality and climate policies and to get good responses. However, I believe that there are, at least at this moment, there are many initiatives that aims to provide aims to enhance the cooperation between countries. And I believe after the publication of 6th assessment report by IPCC, I believe there would be some acceleration also in the policy field, because we need some, I would say, milestones, right? And this assessment report published, this is always something very important and something that gives new insight into projected trends. And so I'm really waiting for it, and I believe it will change the pathway a little bit.
Thank you. Maybe Katerina or Martin, you want to add anything on that?
Please.
Please, Katerina.
Okay, thank you. Actually, in my opinion, I have went through education in Netherlands, then working there on national level. Then I worked for US for other projects. Then I went many times abroad from the company to see how it's environmental and ecosystem protection done elsewhere. Even in Amazon rainforest, I did field work with biomass mapping, and I came to Brussels to work for European Commission. Then I get policy experience. So and now I'm back to my country because I felt that I was doing projects to help protect ecosystems in Amazon rainforest, and did many projects in Netherlands and abroad using GIS and remote sensing. And now I'm back in Slovakia since November, and I see really that it's to be at ministry and delegate, as was said by policy makers, that has to be aware what's going on and has to also know the changes in the landscape as such. I think the combination of education, that people are getting better education in my country, would really help my country to implement better policy and laws, and also information to the people that are living in the countryside or in the cities, but also involve the public to help with the nature conservation, or help alerting activities that are against the protection of ecosystem or polluting water, air, or whatever we see, would be the great opportunity, like to connect public sector, to the citizens, academia, and policymakers that are ministries. So with help of technologies that are available, right? And also startups and private sector should be part of it, because this is one synergy. And policymakers should say that, okay, we are not going to have coal mines anymore, like they did from Commission level, European Commission level. That is one of the goals, to stop emissions, right, by 2030. So step by step, if we work all together, and not only on different levels, like from citizens to ministries, but also connect as countries, that would be really great help in these advanced technologies, because then we can see what's going on with help of people, with help of academia and science, and policymakers will listen to them. So this is my message, that we would also need in Slovakia to improve, I think, from my point of view, the quality of education, the best practices and capacity building of the best technology users. As I saw today, was Israel is doing really nanocubes. So we don't even dream about it here in Slovakia, right? So that would be great to have these images of nanocubes for not only for Slovakia, but for other countries all over the world. So this is my message.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
Very precise message, and it emphasizes on cooperation. I mean, cooperation, it's everything. This is what we are trying to do today by getting information from various scientists from various countries. But what I understand from your message is that we need at the same time a top-down and a bottom-up approach. We need to involve governments and policymakers, but we also need the participation of people in order to be able to achieve anything, because without the people, it's a lost fight. Dr. Tzortzis and Martin?
I would like to tell you, to let everybody know, that today we are in a very crucial announcement just been made by the European Commission. Actually, this provisional agreement on the European climate law is a fact that climate law in Europe goes on, and the vision is that Europe is going to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And now it's not just a policy, because I know that policies and this kind of visions are good and valuable, but they have to be transferred into legal binding acts. So that's why we're here. We need, of course, people from the technological sector. We need economists, we need policymakers, but I have to say that we also need lawmakers. And that's why we're here. And actually, talking about climate law, which is a breakthrough. It's the first time that this is actually happening in the world. It's Europe that sets the standards. We try to set the standards for Europe as a small European country, putting as much as we can this issue forward by setting very high standards and very ambitious targets. But I can see that Europe is moving on. We are in the middle still of this crisis. This is COVID-19 pandemic crisis. But it's important that cooperation is still alive in Europe. And just yesterday, this press release came out, and it's been received by a huge applause by all the members of the European Union. And it's going to be a landmark. We have reached an ambitious agreement to write our climate neutrality target into binding legislation as a guide to our policies for the next 30 years. The climate law will shape the EU green recovery and ensure a socially just green transition. Because like I said, apart from the environment, we have to do with people and jobs, and all this is so closely interconnected. We cannot talk just about the earth, but we have to talk about the inhabitants, either plants, animals, or humans. We're just a part of the same idea and of the same reality. We shouldn't forget that. So we're talking about a very ambitious 2030 climate target set by the European Commission of at least a 55% reduction of net emissions as compared to 1990, with clarity on contribution of emission reductions and removals. We talk about recognition of the need to enhance EU carbon sink through a more ambitious LULUCF regulation, for which the Commission will make proposals in June 2021. We're talking about a process of setting a 2040 climate target, taking into account an indicative greenhouse gas budget for 2030 to 2050 to be published by the Commission. We're talking about an establishment of European Scientific Advisory Board on climate change. That's very important, and will provide independent scientific advice to European Commission, and all these bodies are going to be legally funded and established. And that's important. It's not just policy announcements. We talk about stronger provisions on adaptation to climate change, strong coherence across union policies with a climate neutrality objective, and a commitment to engage with sectors to prepare sector-specific roadmaps, charting the path to climate neutrality in different areas of the economy. Saying that, we have another very important aspect of this development, and this is that state aid, specifically to these areas that they are harder hit by this transition, are going to have special percentages for state aid. State aid is going to be allowed to these areas to support this transition. And that's very important. And it's important that the European Union, European Commission recognizes this need. And you should not take anything for granted talking about laws. We talk about a long tradition. We just have to break lots of very long conceived ideas and texts and jurisprudence. We have to make a fresh start. And I think we're heading towards a very good situation process now. So cooperation is, of course, a key element to all this, but everybody is needed in this process. And more than anybody else, like Professor Theodosiou stressed, are the people who live in those areas, who are mostly affected, who are all affected. And saying that, we shouldn't forget that these areas, Western Macedonia especially, are worst affected by the pandemic. It's not, I guess, it's not by coincidence that in those areas so deprived from nature and from accepted state of their environment, the virus has hit the most. So we need to change this, and we are here to do this. And we are very happy that in this situation we get together and we put our strengths and we have a synthesis, and not only voices, but it has to be one voice towards this direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tzortzis, for this information, for this wonderful news. Again, the European Union seems to be paving the way after the European Green Deal. There was an amazing agreement. Now this climate law is really something very, very important for our common future. And thank you for sharing this information with us. Martin, do you want to make a remark?
Yes, happy Earth Day, everybody.
Happy Earth Day. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you all for participating in this panel. I hope that everyone who had the opportunity to listen to your presentations is very satisfied, and he knows much more than he knew before this session. I'm sure there will be opportunities of collaboration with everyone. Everyone is open for collaboration. So let's do that. Let's pursue this goal, because together we can achieve a lot. Thank you very much for participating in this session. Thank you.
I would like to express my gratitude of the Minister, of Mr. Mousouroulis, who is the chairman of the steering committee, of everybody involved in this Greek initiative, because we want to set the standards, we want to become a best practice to other countries. And like I said, first, want to express our deep gratitude to His Excellency, the Ambassador.
We cannot hear you. Not sure if there's something wrong with the connection.
And encouraging cooperation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are still a little late in our schedule, but I hope it was. I think it was worth it. We are moving now to the second session. The title is Climate Change: Creating Opportunities Through Policy and Support. It comes to as a very nice. It has a very nice connection with what we are discussing at the end of the first session. So I welcome the panelists for the second session. And we are going to start with Jan Mitajewski-Bartwiks. I hope it wasn't too bad by pronunciation.
It's perfect, thank you.
He's an expert at the National Center for Emissions Management at the University of Warsaw. So Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just give me a second. I somehow cannot find when I share the screen. Wait a second. Okay, well, I don't see the option to show you my my PDF, but I'll use the PPT, so it's going to be okay. Do you see the PPT slides?
Yes, yes, we can.
Let's get to the first one. It works a little slow. Okay. Okay, so first of all, big thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I wanted to start by managing your expectations. What can you expect from this presentation? I want to show you some mitigation pathways, so an illustration how we can change our economies, our global economy, in order to stop climate change. But before I show you results, I want to show you a little bit how we get there. How do we derive those results? So I want to give you a dish, but before a dish, I want to have a look on a kitchen together with you. In general, I have a feeling that science a little bit too much is treated like a black box, like a machine for generating, producing messages, what the policymakers should do. But science is knowledge, and knowledge is not just about ready messages, ready dishes, but also about understanding what's going on in the kitchen and about the tools. And actually, I was very happy to see all the presentation of different toolboxes and different tools presented by the previous presenters. So let me show you a little bit of this kitchen. So starting from basics, what we know, what we don't know. So we know that human systems or our economy, global economy, produces GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. We know that GHG emissions have an impact on increasing temperature, and we know that this increase in temperature will have an impact on human system and the economy. So that's what we know. This is the basic physics, and there is no dispute about this. However, what we still have to explore is the scale of all those impacts. So we need to know how much emissions we will produce in the future, what is kind of our forecast. We have to know how much emissions we will produce under different variants of climate policy. Then for a given path of emissions, we have to know what will be the change in the temperature. It's about the physics of climate change. Then given the increase in temperature, we have to know what will be the impact on human system and on the economy. Do we have answers for those questions? Well, we have knowledge. We have our current knowledge about physics in the fields of physics, economics, biology, geology, and many other fields. And what we can do, we can compute expected size of these impacts, taking into account laws of economics, physics, biology, etc., etc., etc. And when I say compute, I really mean computing. So in practice, what we do, we describe all those laws in equations, and there are thousands of them in a single model. And we then try to solve those equations together, like in high school, to get the estimates of our projections. Probably given the number of equations that we have to solve together. 10-20 years ago, it wouldn't be possible, but nowadays we have supercomputers, which we actually also heard about in one of the previous presentations. We have supercomputers in order to facilitate it, and we can do that. So how do we split our work? The scientists divided themselves into the 3 groups. Working group 1 is working on the physics of climate change, so the impact of emissions on increasing temperature. Working group 2, scientists in the working group 2 are working on the impact of the increasing temperature on the human system and on the economy. And then scientists in the working group 3 are working on understanding how much emissions will produce in the future and how it depends on the mitigation options and on the climate policy. And together, as I think already Dr. Joanna mentioned, we write it down, we summarize our results in the IPCC report. The newest the report that is currently under preparation is assessment report number 6, which is going to be completed this year, and hopefully it will be out at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. I am myself the lead author of the assessment report of the working group 3, so a little bit focus more on this question: what we can project about future emissions and different mitigation options. So as I mentioned you, well, we have to compute it, but we have to first understand what factors determine future emissions. And one nice way of structuring this problem is so-called Kaya identity. So this is a mathematical formula that you see in the middle of the screen. And when you look carefully, it's really an identity. So, you know, looking mathematically, energy will cancel with energy, GDP with GDP, population with population, and we have left-hand side equal to right-hand side. So this mathematical identity is always true. It's independent of any assumptions. And what it shows us is it portrays us 4 factors that determine increase in emissions. So starting from the right is population. I hope you can see that. It's population growth. Whoops, I'm sorry. Okay, it's population growth. The second factor is GDP per capita. So what is our income? The third factor is how much energy we need for our production, so per unit of production. What is the energy intensity of our economy? The fourth factor is the way we produce energy. So what is the emission intensity of energy? And we build models in order to understand how each of this factor, to project how each of this factor will look like in the future, and to combine them together. And remember, as I mentioned you, we need this projection, not just, it's not just forecast, but also we need to make this projection for different variants of climate policy. And how we do it, as I mentioned, we do it with computable numerical models. So these are the models which have very large set of equations describing laws of economics, forecasts by engineers, physical constraints, put them all together, solve them, and give us projection. Usually these models are representing or are simulating a global economy with a very detailed representation of energy sector, transport sector, and agriculture. So those sectors in which we have main sources of emissions. And then those models can generate projections. So as I mentioned you, as I promised you, now comes the dish. So the results of those models. So the left graph shows you the path of emissions for different levels of ambitions regarding climate policy. So the yellow line is the so-called baseline. What happens if we do nothing? If there is no effort, we don't have any climate policy. And as you see in this scenario, the emissions would increase. And keep in mind that's only for OECD. In non-OECD countries, this increase would be actually even sharper. Then the other three lines are the so-called RCP scenarios. RCP 1.9 is the most ambitious climate policy. It would allow us to limit increase in global mean temperature by 1.5 degrees, comparing to pre-industrial era. Then the orange line is the RCP 2.6, gray is 3.4. So these are a little bit less ambitious scenarios. 2.6, for example, allows us to limit increase in temperature by 2 degrees. And as you see in all those scenarios, all these scenarios in which we want to limit temperature, we would need to decrease emissions. And if you want to achieve this target of 1.5 degree, then we have to decrease them very, very urgently, very quickly. And on the right-hand side, you see the prediction, the projections of carbon tax would be necessary to induce this reduction in emissions. So again, for the yellow line, you see, well, as I told you, by assumption, it's zero. There's no effort. For the other lines, they're actually sharply increasing. So obviously, a small disclaimer, obviously the carbon tax is not the only instrument of climate policy, but this graph is illustrating the effort that we have to make in order to decarbonize. And well, as expected, if you want to achieve these ambitious targets, this effort would have to increase quite substantially very soon in coming decades, already starting from now. And let's focus a little bit on this blue line. So the blue line, which portrays this most ambitious climate policy, limiting the increase in temperature by 1.5 degree. What change in economy we would need in order to achieve that? And well, as you probably know, the most dramatic change would have to come in the energy sector, in the way we produce electricity. So these graphs are showing you the capacity of renewable energy sources. And the left one shows the capacity of the wind turbines. That's where we are now in 2020. Well, if you want to pursue this ambitious goal of limiting climate change, limiting increasing temperature by 1.5 degrees, then in next 20 years, you would need to increase the capacity of wind turbines, well, fourfold. And in next 40 years, you'd have to increase it basically tenfold. And for photovoltaics, it's even more dramatic. So these are not alternatives. You'd have to do both. So not only increasing the wind capacity of wind turbines, but also capacity of photovoltaic panels. And here you see even more dramatic change. You would have to, in the next 20 years, you would have to increase the capacity of PVs by 5-fold. And in the next 40 years, actually, next 40-50 years, actually almost 20-fold. So this is a change in the power sector. Obviously, in addition, this would be accompanied by a very drastic drop in the consumption of fossil fuels. Basically, we have to phase out coal in the next 10 years if you want to go for this ambitious policy. Afterwards, you see a small increase, like a hill between 2030 and 2070, and that's because the models forecast that we will be able to use the technologies that are capturing carbon dioxide, for example, CCS, carbon capture and storage. But again, an important note that those technologies are not available yet, and they are highly uncertain. So this hill, well, maybe will have some small increase in consumption of coal, but that's highly uncertain. And obviously, at the same time, you need to have a very dramatic drop in the consumption of oil. So basically, what you see here on the right side is that already from 2030, there is no way of buying new cars that are using petrol. We can afford only those that are currently on roads, and hoping that they will be very quickly replaced by electric vehicles. So to summarize, I think my time is out. So to summarize, well, are those ambitious climate goals, targets possible? Is it possible to still limit increase in temperature by 1.5 degrees? According to models, yes, we still have an option to do it, but this would require a very urgent and very radical change in the way we produce, in the way our economy functions, especially in the sectors of energy, in the sector of transport, and also in the sector of agriculture. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please, I'm very happy to answer.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for this very interesting presentation. Thank you for bringing the economic dimension of climate change to this session, to this discussion. And I would also like to thank you for keeping the time, because we already behind the schedule. So I will also ask the next presenters to keep in mind time, so that people will not get very tired. Although this is also so interesting that I don't think that anyone is tired, but nevertheless, we need to be on schedule. So our next presenter is Mr. Milan Zvara, the director of the Emission Trading Department from the Ministry of Environment of the Slovak Republic, a colleague of Katerina, I suppose.
Yep. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Yes, colleague of Katerina, but she's in different directive. And thank you for invitation. And I will do it more informally, as I was asked to do it. So you sent me the questions, and I was thinking, like, what's the right question? What was the right answer on your questions? And I have to say it's very difficult to answer, and it's a very multifaceted question. And since I'm in the hot point of the policy making in our ministry, I would share a few of my thoughts, how I see these issues, how to do good policy making or creating good opportunity in mitigating climate change issues. I think the good opportunity, you would have to create two conditions in policy making, and these are to find the right intersection between different layers of policies and different layer of stakeholders. The most importantly, between citizens, between other ministries and government, which is the most difficult, I think, and between business, and of course between our ministry and European Union. The basic point is to go to the same direction, that everybody can go and meet somewhere in some point of intersection, that this is basically the one which is then which is the right opportunity to do something on the climate change. And at the same time, the second condition would be to meet the green transformation requirement. This is that it means that the whole transformation and policy tool has to be perceived as an opportunity, not as something which has to be done, which has to be forced, but more as an opportunity to do something, to grow, and do something profitable for various stakeholders. So not necessarily for state. And in this point, the support is good help, but just helicopter money is not enough, because you know that every individual has to invest himself or herself to the change. And I will elaborate a little bit on this, because we failed on some. We achieved some progress on other issues, but I have to say that find the right cocktail is quite difficult. And my experience is that the most helpful factor which helps to mix the right cocktail is Slovakia, is the EU membership, which helps us a lot to push plenty of the issues forward. And when I was thinking like in which point the EU membership helps us, and I would when I could do some ranking, I would say it's the Europeanization which helps us the most, and is the way how the business citizen individuals are comparing between the other good practices, and the peer pressure of the other states, what they do, what the other ministries have to do, especially from other countries. And then it's the EU law, which of course it's a more brave or more ambitious that we would have ever achieved as a ministry of environment. And then of course EU money, but it's not the most substantial tool in this effort. So hadn't it been for the EU membership, we wouldn't go so far. The climate change issue, since it's something which is not so visible for government or for citizens, so sometimes it's very difficult to convince them to adopt some measures. And there is also some element lately which is mentioned a lot, that is the COVID pandemic impact. And I was surprised when we saw the latest data in Slovakia. We saw that as we expected that we would have a big drop in sectors outside of the trading system, so it's a transport of small installations. And we were surprised to find that we actually had an increase of the consumption of diesel. So basically the most of the traffic we expecting. We still have the preliminary data, of course, so we will have the results next year only. But so we can say now that we expect that we will have even an increase of the emissions in the non-ETS. And when we counted ETS or trading system emissions, we saw drop. But when we analyzed the drop, most of the data behind the drop was from some specific measures which were implemented not due to COVID, but due to factors like some coal power plant was transformed, or which was planned before, or there was a steel mill which has a big furnace under reconstruction, and it's going on for a few years. So I'm still surprised to see the final data, but this is something which was surprising for us. So this might change the shift in the way how we think as a citizens, but the preliminary data shows it's not going to be so helpful as before. Then I can give you some examples if I still think have some time. And we did some achievements, especially thanks to the carbon price on the bigger installations in the energy sector, where ETS, European Trading System, helps us a lot. And we achieve also some transformation of the sector, and especially we will be decarbonizing the electricity production. I'm not saying completely, at least that we will phase out the coal within 2 years from electricity production, and from the heat production we will phase out coal within 3 years, maximum to till 2025. So we plan to have within 2 years more than 90% of our electricity mix carbon free, thanks to nuclear and renewables. Then we also had some achievement with refurbishment of the big apartment houses, but on other side, where we failed, and it's also interesting because one would thought that since the state policies are those who are making the climate policies, so the state sector or the sector which is owned by state should be the first which shows us some example. Is other way around. In Slovakia, we have the lowest rate of refurbishment of the buildings is the public buildings in Slovakia. It's less than 30% compared to big housing buildings which are refurbished more than 70% the rate. So this is also something which one, and private houses are refurbished up to 50% rate. This is something which when somebody look at it, see that the opportunity which creates state doesn't mean a good policy result in the state sector. Then also where we failed more or less, or we are failing, is the transport policies, where we are still increasing the emissions from transport. We actually doubled the emission from transport since 1990. It has, of course, various results. So the topic is very complex, and there is plenty of variables behind. But this is also due to one big element where I'm coming back to the beginning of my intervention, and it's basically that is how to approach in our policies the white citizens, the wider public. And this failing of the engagement with the wider public in dealing with the climate change is also the result that the transport emissions are growing and it's not very successful. One of the results. So here I'm coming to one crucial question, and this is whether it's only effective to have a soft measures, or it's also with engaging with the wider population, or it would be also better to have some harder obligations or harder measures. And this is something which you also ask us to answer, and it's basically, as you see, the soft measures are in a way the way how we dealing mostly with the issues, but I think it's very important that we will also approach with some harder measures in the future, and because if we are going to approach this radical mitigation, thanks also to technologies and other things which were mentioned in the previous interventions, we might have also impact on some prosperity level. And this is something which I'm not sure whether everybody who was in those rallies, Fridays for Future, from the young people, were aware of it, that if we are going to tackle it seriously, we might have some drop of the prosperity, and everybody has to cut off from their welfare, and nobody can expect that the cheap fossil energy will be the way forward, and everybody will have to look at its spending, especially the footprint of the goods they are spending or buying, the way how they pay for heating, and the way how they travel. So yeah, these are just few of my thoughts on your basic question, how to create the good opportunities in the climate change making. I am happy to engage in more debate.
Yes, thank you very much. There were very interesting thoughts. Among the many things that you mentioned, I would like to emphasize on what you already focused on the role of the European Union. European Union is not just a key player for the region; it's a global key player, and we already know. But this was one of the remarks posed by Dr. Tzortzis on even the new initiatives that the European Union has taken to tackle the impacts of climate change. So we need to remember that we're not just recipients of European Union policy, but we are members and partners, and we are also producers of these new directives, and we need to keep that in mind. So thank you very much. We don't have with us Laszlo Srabo, as is in the program, but we are very happy to have Agnes Torosik in his place. She's a senior research associate at the Regional Center for Energy Policy Research. Agnes, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Do you hear me? Okay, perfect, thanks. Happy afternoon to everyone from the sunny Budapest, and thanks for the invitation. REC is a research institution based at the Corvinus University. So we are usually dealing with these analyses of the policy measures, and I fully agree with Milan and the Slovakian ministry representative that this is a very easy situation to analyze something from the outside, but at the end you have to have the measures aligned to meet everyone's expectations. So it's not an easy issue, but I really love the topic of this panel. So I will share my screen, and because of the timing of this session, I only have 2 points which I would like to add to the discussion. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. So what I would like to talk about today is the green recovery in the Visegrad region. And my presentation is based on a research we just have finished, and it's under publication. And we have 2 questions to answer. First question was the pandemic situation on the climate goals. And the second question was that given the current economic situation, do we still have the policy opportunities to invest in fighting against the climate change? Regarding the first question, what was the effect of the pandemic situation on the emissions? I would like to share with you some recent data from the International Energy Agency, and this is very important to understand what's happening. On the chart, you see the global energy-related CO2 emission, and what is interesting that the whole trend is increasing until the last year, and in 2020, the emissions were decreasing. What happened because of the COVID lockdowns? There was the largest annual drop in global energy-related carbon dioxide emissions since the Second World War. But after hitting a low in April, the global emissions rebounded, and in December, they were already above the level from 1 year before. So the emission last year in 2020 was 2% higher than it was a year before. So without the sustainability recovery measures we are discussing today, the world will face increasing emissions again. But the good news here is that it is possible to decrease the emission. And what we did the same analysis for the EU and the Visegrad countries. And on the chart, you see what happened with the emissions in the European Union. And you see that the April, June, July emissions was down by almost 20%. And we checked what's happening in the Visegrad region. And it appears that the second quarter economic downturn was very, very huge. And what we also found is, and is very, very interesting, that if you see the trend line in the European Union, the greenhouse gas emissions were decreasing already before the pandemic situation. And this is what I would like to emphasize, that in 2019, the emissions in the European Union were 4% lower than the year before. And this happened before the pandemic situation, so the GDP and the emission decoupling has already started. And what happened in the Visegrad region, we checked the same, and the trend is true in the V4 countries too, which means that the emission in 2019 was lower than in the emission in 2018. The energy-related CO2 emission was decreasing already, parallel to an increase in the GDP. And this is a very, very promising situation. And the second issue I would like to discuss with you today is how the policy opportunities are affected by the pandemic situation. What we see is that all the European countries are setting the 2030 targets and the 2050 low carbon decarbonization targets. And they have many, many priorities and measures listed how to reach these decarbonization goals. What we did, that we analyzed the Visegrad countries' energy sectors by the greenhouse gas emission intensity. I would like to refer back to Jan's presentation, who showed you the formula of the emission. And we deal one part of this, we were not dealing with population and GDP forecast, but what happens under a given GDP with the related emission, which means that one unit of value added is producing how much emission by country and by sector. And why were we doing this? To understand that which are those sectors where the policy measures should focus. So in this chart, you see that the black line is the EU average emission per sector for the whole European Union. And what is very, very interesting, that you can compare Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia to these average values. And for example, on the top, you see the total emission intensity, and you see that the black line is the EU, and you see that the Hungarian and the Slovakian emission intensity is higher, but the green line is for the Czech Republic and the yellow is for Poland, and these are even higher. And if you would like to break it down to further details, you can find very, very interesting things. The first statement is for the Czech Republic, that we see that the emission of a unit value added product in the energy sector is well below the EU average. It is 2.5 times higher. And this is mainly based because of the huge ratio of the coal. And we already heard today that there are very, very ambitious plans to close the coal regions. So it is obvious that this should be on the priority list in the Czech Republic. In case of the Hungary, which is the gray line, you see that the manufacturing and the energy supply sectors are just slightly higher than the EU average. But if you check the emission, the unit emission of the transport and water supply sectors, you will see that it is higher than the EU average. So there is absolutely room for measures to target these areas. We checked the same for Slovakia, and you see that in case of the agriculture and energy supply, the emission per unit value added is very well below the EU average. This is what Milan also already mentioned, that because of the huge ratio of the nuclear and the phasing out of coal and focusing on the renewables, this sector will be very characterized by low emission. But in case of the industry and the water supply, the emission is still higher than the EU average. And in case of Poland, we found that the emission intensity from the energy supply is one of the highest in the European Union. So there is a huge challenges here. We did the same analysis for the last 10 years. And in this chart, you see that the black is the EU average decrease again. It means that the greenhouse gas emission intensity decrease during the last decade. And you see that almost all Visegrad countries and in almost all sectors have decreased their emission level far better than the EU average. So you see that they are all on track. But there are still many opportunities to plan actions to further reduce the emissions. Given the time frame, I would like to finish now, and I stop the screen sharing if I can. And I would like to add two points as a closing. Yeah, I could close the presentation. That we are really thankful for the ambassador for Poland to being the host of this Polish V4 presidency event, and for the professor for chairing this panel and the discussion. I found this very, very interesting. And my issue here is that we had many discussions earlier regarding the V4 energy sector with the common priorities of security and supplies, mainly in terms of gas, important gas security. And I like this today's discussion and our meetings in the last 3 years, because of in the V4 region, we see many cooperation discussion on how to reach the climate goals. So it's far beyond the security of supply, but we are focusing on how to reach the climate goals and what are the common priorities. And having Greece and Israel in relation to this discussion is very, very good. I enjoyed the presentation about the Greece core region transformation very much. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Agnes. It's true that we all recorded, especially during the first lockdown, some reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions globally. So this is something hopeful, but we need to find ways to implement more rational measures in order to reduce this greenhouse gas emissions and not wait for the next global pandemic to happen again. So it was a good lesson, and we need to learn from that lesson.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you again, Agnes. Our next speaker is Artur Rosenblum. He's the CEO of EcoOcean, and an NGO from Israel. Arik, you have the sea behind you, so it's a very attractive background. We cannot hear you. I'm not sure if you're speaking, but we cannot hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. First of all, thank you, and thanks for inviting me, and thanks for all the people that organized the day. I ask that you bear with me on the fact that I am actually the only representative of a non-governmental agency in this group. And I think the example that I brought is a bit different from all the angles that have been talked about today. So look at it as looking at the issues from a different perspective. What I wanted to do, and I'm going to be a bit adapting and changing according to the things that I heard from the group, so bear with me with that as well, is that I'm actually going to talk about what happens when the policymakers fail and what can still be done. And all the people and groups that you mentioned, and perhaps a few others that weren't mentioned, are powerful players in whatever human society is going to do in order to meet the climate change head on. And I'll go quickly into my premise. So just 2 seconds about us. We're an NGO that deals with marine research. We have a research vessel. We deal with education, and we deal with community outreach, which includes, for instance, a whole amount of work that we do with local municipalities. And I want to bring them into the story for a second, because again, I'm preparing the ground for the fact that I'm going to bring you an incident of disaster management that happened just a month ago, started just a month ago in Israel, and how it was dealt with, not by the policymakers, not by the high officials, but rather by a lot of other players. And one very strong and important player is the local authorities. I think I won't be saying it's just about Israel. I think it's about many countries around the world. When you really look at quality of life, the average citizen gets most of the quality of life services from the local authority and not from the national government. Example, for instance, in Israel, but I know it's true in many other countries, the education system, the relief and welfare system, and the environmental system. Almost all of the services that people expect and need in order to be able to say that they have a quality of life is really being given them not by faraway policymakers, but by municipalities that are trying to meet the needs of their population. Now, after mentioning that, we had the opportunity to create a very strong relationship with our local municipalities because we brought to Israel a program that's international called, in our case, Blue Flag. It's part of an international organization called FEE. And Blue Flag basically trains and helps municipalities to understand how to manage a sustainable beach so that they will fit international standards. Now, what happened was it created a situation, and by the way, this is a international eco label. It has, I'm sorry, this is in Hebrew, but it has almost 5,000 locations all over the world. It's a very major thing. And what we did with it was, being the representative in Israel, we created a relationship with municipalities, which helped us in what was about to happen. And by the way, this is the amount of beaches we have in Israel. The municipalities began to create a coastal authority form where they began to say, we have to take ownership of what happens in our area. And again, all that led to the situation that I'm about to talk about. The Israel oil spill emergency, it started on the 17th of February. And it was something that we in Israel and we as an NGO in Israel were very concerned about, because basically, and if you could see just the commercial ship movement in the Mediterranean Sea, much of it leaves from Suez Canal and goes to Europe. And what's going to Europe in many cases are oil tankers that are bringing the oil to Europe in quite a significant amount. Now, we know from studying the situation about oil spills that statistically it's going to happen. It's not that it may happen. It's statistically, there's no way it's not going to happen. And the fact that we knew that day by day, hundreds of ships are passing our coastline, and one day, one ship is going to dislode its oil and cause a catastrophe, had worried us. Now, it didn't just worry us, it worried the civic service people, the professional people in the Ministry of Environment in Israel, and they created a law named the National Contingency Plan for Preparedness and Response to Combating Oil Pollution. Problem is, that law that was proposed in 2008 was never enacted. So for instance, although the Ministry of Environment is responsible in case of an oil spill, they don't have the ships, they don't have the authority, they don't have the money, the resources in order to actually professionally deal with it. And we knew this was happening. And what we then did was we went to the ministry and we said, okay, we have found a donor. Let us help you do something that right now the Ministry of Finance and other entities in the government are not pushing forward. We're going to give you our research vessel as the first response vessel. We're going to convince the municipalities, even though there's no law that is telling the municipalities they have to prepare for a sea emergency because the law was never passed. We went to every one of the 22 municipalities in the state of Israel and convinced them to prepare for an oil spill. And we trained in each of the municipalities 20 volunteers that were trained by international standards to be prepared for this event. And we set up a national command center for the situation of how to recruit, train, and deploy the ad hoc volunteers that will come if there's an oil spill. And then on the 17th of February, 1,200 tons of tar hit 160 kilometers out of our 195 kilometers of beach. And it was declared as a Tier 2B sea disaster. Just to give you proportions, Mexico, Alaska were Tier 3. We were one below Tier 3. And in that case, it was our trial by fire, and our medics went into action. But what was more important was the municipalities. Even though they had no official approval by the government that they'll get money for all the things that they're about to do, they set up with our trained volunteers, they responded to the situation. And we set up a national volunteer command center in which the municipalities, through the coastal authorities forum and the nature authority and the government, all sat in a volunteer command center that we set up, where we helped recruit 10,000 to 12,000 volunteers a day over a month and a half, where they were recruited, they were trained, they were equipped, they were insured, and they were deployed. All that with working without actually the national government and giving the required equipment and support for that to happen. I'm bringing this case in order to say, you can think, well, this is terrible. Yeah. On the other hand, I think that what we can learn from it, and what I think when we talk about it, policymakers, first of all, do your job. That's important. But second of all, understand that the people that are actually going to do it in the end are the civil servants in your ministries, and they're the local authorities, and they're the volunteer organizations. And that's if just like you mentioned in the questions that you asked the group in the first panel, and their answer was perfect in my mind. Collaboration, big picture thinking. It's not, if you can think of policies till tomorrow, you can do research till tomorrow. If there's no grassroots, ground work done, it's all going to be just theory, and we're not going to meet the goals that we need to meet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very informative. Thank you for bringing this perspective in our discussion. I mean, NGOs certainly play a very, very important role in the protection of the environment. And as you said, it's much better to prevent, especially as far as the environment is concerned. It's much better to prevent than to run afterwards and try to restore whatever damage has been done in the environment. So it's really, really, very, very important. Now we're coming to the last presentation of this session. Last but not least, Vladimir Kubeček, researcher at the Environmental Center of the Charles University. Vladimir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and we can see your
presentation. Thank you very much. Okay. Your Excellencies, dear distinguished guests, and dear colleagues, I'd like to talk about the role of governments in energy transition, because I think it's one of the most important things how to save the planet. In fact, energy is the majority of the greenhouse gases and is the major cause of the climate change. And we need to somehow strengthen and streamline our ambition and translate it to actions. And I think for this, the government has a very important roles to play. And I think there are four crucial points which I'm seeing which needs full focus and probably improvement in any country. First of all, it's how we set up our visions and how we derive governmental and, in fact, municipal and other policies and strategies. The second is how we set up the legislation and regulations. And then how we support our innovation and how we deal with the data which are generated in the economy and also with the actions we are doing. And the fourth is, in fact, how we are going to finance the energy transition. So let me start with the first one. Okay. So I think what we really need to focus on is on vision and strategy, how to set it up. We need to pretty much just take the example of many companies and corporations where what they do is simply strategy is a circular process. It goes from the analysis of the surrounding, of our mission, of our vision, to setting up the strategic goals. Then we create strategy, then we implement strategy, we evaluate strategy, and we change and adjust our strategy goals. And all this is extremely important, that we don't only write one strategy, but we follow the whole circle and do all the evaluation. And I believe there is a lot of area or space for improvements. Since it's a governmental strategy, it needs to be done with the full transparency. And it means it needs public discussions. It needs public information. It needs to be communicated to municipalities. And there, the communication is extremely long and important process. You know, I don't think that the good policy is, for example, Czech Republic, the first national climate and energy plan was put to discussion just before Christmas, and that the whole discussion and commenting ended the first week in January. To be honest, it's extremely short period for any analysis of 400-page document. And, you know, we need to try to put the transparency in setting the goals and into strategy setting, simply the importance it has. The second part is the governments needs to provide capacity, and I mean people, the human capacity, but also money. In fact, look that this capacity is efficiently used. Because if you don't give capacity, you don't give resources, then nothing's going to happen. You know, people can work a lot by enthusiasm, but they also need to have a feedback and look at it. The third part is tools. We need to have tools to be able to do and to provide the strategy. We need models, we need data, but models, not only energy models, but also the models modeling the whole economy and seeing the effects of the energy transition to the economy, because at the end it will be people who will be seeing the effects of the policies. You know, yeah, the coal regions will have negative effect from the closing of the coal mines, but in the long term or even the medium term, with the right policies, the closing of the coal mines can be beneficial for people living and working there. And for this, we need to do it rigorously and based on good policies which are based on facts. And the third part is, of course, making all this as a process. So, as I said, setting, creation, implementation, evaluation. And all this needs to be also much discussed and communicated to public and all people involved. The second part is, of course, legislation. Legislation, and I would like to praise, in fact, yesterday the Commission agreed on the climate law, which is in fact what I'm writing here, set the goals into the legal framework and make them binding. Because we, last 10-15 years, all the goals were pretty much non-binding and definitely not set up in the frame, not in the legislation. And that created always the space for, well, finding the excuses why not to go to, or why not to meet the goal. However, it's also important that the legislation must be stable and predictable, and must be clear from what is the goal of the legislation. Then we, of course, have also the regulation of the markets, and this regulation needs to be flexible. And what I mean by flexible, it needs to be open to new technologies. We have heard in previous, in the first panel, about these tremendous possibilities in technologies. But there are simply some cases that the legislation and the regulation doesn't allow the new technologies to be part of the market. And this needs to be changed. There might be a sandbox sandbox clauses so that you can do a lot of piloting outside of the current legal framework. And these are the ways what the legislation and regulation needs to allow. We also need to evaluate and adjust our policies. We need to measure what are the effects of the policies we introduce and whether they, in fact, led to the goals based on which they were agreed on. And based on this, we need to share and learn from our mistakes, but also from our successes. And I believe that this, many times, the energy transition is thought as a technology issue. No, it's not only a technology issue. There is a lot of social science behind that in how the society will respond, how the policies work, and also how to most efficiently introduce the technologies. So the technologies. Here I have, in fact, borrowed a graph from the International Energy Agency, which shows the technologies by the state of the innovation which should be used and deployed in the sustainable scenarios in the energy transition. The green one is the early adoption. So it means that it's already on the market, but it's not a major technology on the market. It means it's a technology which is available, you can go and buy, but it's early adoption. The yellow one is a demonstration, and then the orange is a large prototype. And in fact, the energy transition relies in large portion, and 50%, and this is a sustainable scenario which gives a net zero scenario by 2070. So it's much more conservative than what we agreed in EU. 50% of technologies are currently only in demonstration and prototype and large prototype. And the government has a very important role here. It's not only about supporting research, but also the early implementation and demonstration and prototyping, because this will be crucial. And this, in fact, leads us back to this good modeling. Why we are doing it? Because, in fact, yeah, we are time constrained, and the governments, by its policies, will be cherry picking the best available technologies at the moment, which are available. So probably it won't be economically optimal because we don't let the market decide, but we should let the government or the policy choose the best possibilities based on information we have. So this, I also think, is extremely important how we deal with the data, because a lot of new technologies which will play an important role, and renewables is a very variable renewables storage is an important part, because the enabler of their implementation is a digitalization of the economy and of the system. And we must distinguish between digitization versus digitalization. We just don't want only computers to collect the data. We want to use the data which are created. The digitalization play important role. And I think we have still a good unlocked opportunity in this sector. And one part of this is a data availability. I can just talk about the Czech Republic, but there are no public information on annual production by source, by plant. Okay, you are not able to get this information. If you want to do a good modeling, you need this information, and you need a lot of information. There is still discussion about how to do the smart metering, and yeah, this can really help. But the issue is that if the distribution and transmission companies will not digitalize and make the data public, there will be simply IT companies which will just put a small, black box on your wire, and they will do the reading by themselves, and they will use and manage your home appliances just by 5G generation telecommunication. So it's also an important part for the existing industry just to stay in a game, because the inflow of the digital services and the IT companies into energy is definitely happening. And the last part, I believe, what the governments need to focus is on investment. The energy transition is very intensive on new investment, and in many areas, and the government do not have the resources to finance everything. It needs to become a business as usual. So there needs to be a mobilization of private capital. And government, again, can play a very good role. First of all, they can act by example. If you do a good project, energy efficient building, you use the EVs, electromobility, you really do energy management in your services, and this can really help. But there is also the need to, in fact, show that the green financing is a good thing. First of all, we were talking, and there was discussion about all these big funds which are coming from just transition and Green Deal money and EIB being involved, etc. But this also needs to be optimized of national support schemes. How do you efficiently provide the money? And not only through grants, but also using the advanced financial tools. It's probably much more efficient on something what is already very usual, like financing passive housing. Maybe it's more efficient to use a risk-sharing facility, so guarantees from the state to the private banks, because most private banks, at least in Czech Republic, they have more money that they can pretty much borrow. The savings in the banks are higher than the loans they are providing. The second part is green bonds, how it is, but it's also a support of a ESG, environmental social governance, financing and investment, that it's a standard thing. But I believe the most important thing, and to conclude with this, is we need a mind change. We need to say, no, this is not some distant future. This is not something that might happen in the future. No, this is what we are doing now, because this is the only way how to really avoid the probably very negative effects of the global warming. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. You raised a lot of issues, and I wouldn't know where to start from. Just one remark on what you mentioned about the legislation. It's not easy to create new legislation, especially environmental legislation. It needs to be focused and strict, and at the same time flexible and adaptable, in order to be efficient and effective. I'm sure that we could discuss for hours with each and every one of you. We had some very, very interesting presentations today. I'm afraid we need to close because we are already 45 minutes behind schedule. I'm really sorry that we don't have the opportunity to continue our discussion. It would be really very interesting. Maybe the organizers should consider repeating this event. In my opinion, it was very successful. I will give the floor to my very good friend and colleague, Phoebe Gunduri, for some closing remarks. Just to mention a very few of her affiliations, because that would take time as well. She's a professor at the Athens University of Economics and Business. She's a fellow of the World Academy of Arts and Sciences. She's a director of the Sustainable Development Unit at the Athena Informatics Research Center, and she's a co-chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network for Greece and for Europe as well. Phoebe? You are muted.
Sorry about this, Nico. I was muted, and I was trying to find the unmute button. So I don't know. Can you see my slides? Because something weird happened here with my slides. Can you see them?
We can see and hear you. We can see the slides.
Okay, that's great. Then thank you very much for your lovely introduction. It's always a pleasure discussing with you, but I'm also very honored and happy that we are supporting this event of the embassy. It is quite crucial that the different policy and political institutions are on board in this sustainability transition. Unfortunately, I was not able to follow all the discussion because I was part of the European Commission Parliament voting for the new climate adaptation opinion, but I heard some of it, and I'm also seeing friends from old days here who I appreciate so much their work, and I learned a lot from those that I heard. I want to close this excellent discussion by a very quick snapshot of what we do in the climate transition in this era of the three big tsunamis that we are facing: the COVID tsunami, the huge recession that is produced by the social distancing measures. It is amazing that we have vaccines now available, but we are still trying to regulate and respond with short-run measures in a way that this pandemic will not become a crisis that will long outlast the health crisis. So we try to contain the economic crisis, keep the workforce employed, channel support, government support to vulnerable citizens, safeguard SMEs, safeguard the financial sector for non-performing loans. But at the same time, we try to take long-run measures that will allow us to recover back better in a way that it is sustainable, economically sustainable, socially sustainable, and environmentally sustainable. And the environmental part is also crucial because we know that the mother of all crises is the climate crisis. At the moment, there is no country that is not experiencing the drastic effects of the climate crisis, and this translates into annual average losses in the hundreds of billions and millions of people being killed and injured. We know currently that the nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement are totally inadequate to achieve the goal of a maximum 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we definitely need to accelerate the transition. And the big question is how. I am honored to co-chair SDSN Europe, which is a part of a global network, Sustainable Development Solutions Network of the UN, which is under the auspices of the General Secretary of the UN and tries to communicate the solutions we scientists produce for climate mitigation and adaptation, and generally the transition to the sustainability transition to the other stakeholders, that is to the policymakers, the politicians, the NGOs, the businesses, the financial sector, the civil society. Lately, SDSN Europe has launched SDSN Global, which has hubs all over the world, and members in the hundreds of, in the thousands of research institutions and universities around the globe, has launched SDSN Europe. The aim here is to use the expertise of the 400 members in Europe in order to align the European recovery with Agenda 2030. And also leverage the research of SDSN on the 6 transformations to achieve the SDGs in order to shape a sustainable and resilient recovery. One of the actions that we do is this sustainable is this report on the transformations for the joint implementation of Agenda 2030 and the European Green Deal. So within SDSN, there is a senior working group that publishes every year this report, which tries to sketch explicit pathways, technological policy and financial pathways for a green, digital, job-based and inclusive recovery from COVID-19. I'm honored to co-chair this group with Jeff Sachs, the UNSDSN president. And let me just very quickly refer to the main messages of last year's report. First, we have a moral responsibility to build back better or forward better, which I prefer, because these COVID recovery packages are loans from future generations. They need to be paid. So we need to take into account their welfare while we are building today better. The good news is that there is an economic case for building forward better. Our recent simulations, from other research groups around the world, show that the effect of a green recovery produces an economic stimulus which is more growth enhancing than a return to normal stimulus. So we want to have a green and digital stimulus, and what is also important is that this fiscal stimulus is should boost aggregate demand, but also, and importantly, should transform public investments, should invest in transformative public investments that will shape a sustainable, fair, green, and digital transition, and at the same time leverage private sector investment. Because as we know, although the 715 billion of the EU Next Generation instrument, in addition to the European MFF, are not enough for a green and digital and inclusive transition that leaves no one behind. We need to reduce the uncertainty after this huge recession from the COVID pandemic in order to convince the private sector to come in and invest with the public sector. And to do that, we need to reduce uncertainty, as I said before, but we also need opportunities. We need to create, to transpose the climate mitigation and adaptation challenge and biodiversity loss challenge into opportunities, into business opportunities, and into investments. Our long-run vision is the United Nations Agenda 2030, and the Paris Agreement and the European Green Deal, as Nico said before, provides the right level of ambition and direction towards this long-term vision. Our report connected the 4 major policy initiatives, the SDGs, the European Green Deal, the European semester process, and the European Recovery Plan, and sketched actionable strategies to support policymakers and guide them for an EU-wide and national economic recovery in line with Europe's overreaching sustainability agenda. The policy framework is there, is the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, the transformation pathways of the SDGs. We have 17 SDGs that are very interrelated, and the transformation pathways indicate operationalization within the structure of governments, and they refer to education, health, energy decarbonization, sustainable food, land, water, and ocean, sustainable cities and communities, and the digital revolution to sustainable development. Then, of course, we have the European Green Deal with its 1 trillion budget, and of course, the response to the coronavirus, not just the short-run response, but also the long-run report, which is hidden in this 750 billion, most of which goes to the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And the good news, as I said many times, is that this European Recovery Fund instrument stays within the spirit of the European Green Deal. It is 37% climate mainstream. It respects the do no harm principle, do no significant harm principle, and any investment that is financed by it needs also to be 20% digital mainstream. So we have a policy framework. It's been revised and restructured. 2 days ago, we had the final climate law. 1 day ago, yesterday, we had the new rules for sustainable finance. We are moving fast. We need to know that in order to succeed, first, the European Green Deal is a mirror image of the SDG. Second, we need technological pathways to be explicit in order to be able to make the transition. Third, we need to be aware of the fact that sustainable finance will be a crucial mobilizer, and both public financial institutions, national banks, but also commercial banks need to endorse it, and at the same time, companies, the businesses, need to start having the capacity for reporting with regards to ESG. Fourth, it is important to understand that the European Green Deal will produce about 1 million additional jobs in the green and digital sector, but we also need to know that for these jobs, a massive wave of reskilling and upskilling needs to take place. And lastly, all this needs to happen in an inclusive way, in a very cooperative way, to engage all relevant stakeholders, to give them space for their opinion. We need open processes, and we need to make sure that everybody's opinion is heard, that nobody is left behind. There are structures to do that. We use a systems innovation approach, but it is quite important for all this to happen fast because we don't have enough time until 2030. In closing, and in the next half a minute, let me introduce the cluster for sustainability transition, which is the group that I lead, working on transforming research and innovation into sustainability action. It's a cluster of the Athens University of Economics and Business and the Research Laboratory on Socioeconomic and Environmental Sustainability. It's Athena Research and Innovation Informatics Center. There I lead the Sustainable Development Unit, which includes Climate Kick of Greece. EIT Climate Kick is part of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology and is the biggest European public-private partnership for accelerating innovation relevant to a climate-neutral economy. I'm also very involved in the Sustainable Development Solutions Network in the European Hub and in the Greek Hub that I co-chair, and I'm also chairing the Climate Task Force in Green Cross International, another global NGO. So in this cluster, we work in research and innovation projects, in innovation acceleration, and in education and training and awareness. With regards to our thematics priorities, the first one has to do with blue growth. We have two big global initiatives. The first one refers to sustainable shipping and ports. And the second one that we work together with Nikos Theodosiou, so SDSN Black Sea that he chairs, SDSN Europe, SDSN Greece, and SDSN Mediterranean are joining forces in order to sketch pathways for sustainable blue growth in the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, the Aral Sea, and the Caspian Sea. In addition to many research projects on different aspects of blue growth, shipping, sustainable ports, marine protected area, energy production from shipping, fisheries, aquaculture, and so on. We also run a big accelerator, European accelerator for startups and other innovators that can contribute to the decarbonization of climate of the maritime sector. Our second thematic is climate change, mitigation and adaptation, green digital, just recovery, circular economy, and nature-based solutions. Each slide you see is a different European project or global project that we work on in this area. Our third thematic priority is water, food, energy nexus, smart agriculture, and smart urban water systems. And lately we've won, and we are proud of it, a big ERC award, 10 million in order to put together decision theory that I represent, machine learning, water engineering, and optimal control in order to develop the next generation of urban drinking water systems. Lastly, and I finish with that, we work with innovation. As I said before, we run a general accelerator for any innovative idea that can accelerate the transition to a climate neutral economy. We finance the innovators, we mentor them, and then we introduce them to VCs where they can attract even more funding. We also have the thematic accelerator on maritime, and we run many courses like the professional courses, training courses like Pioneers into Practice, where we fund people to go to sustainable businesses and get expertise and capacity, come back to their country and contribute to the sustainability transition. Of course, we run many global events, and I will be extremely happy to invite you in the next ones. Thank you very much for your patience, Nico. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. I think that was an excellent closure for this to this very interesting event. At this point, I would like to thank you all. Thank especially the panelists for their very interesting presentations. I would like to thank the participants who followed this event either here on Zoom or in the YouTube channel. I would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Lompart for the invitation, for the honor to give me the opportunity of moderating this event. I would like to congratulate the Embassy of the Republic of Poland in Greece and the Embassy of the State of Israel for this very good initiative on this very special day, the Earth Day. I'm not sure if His Excellency the Ambassador would like to say something closing the event.
One moment, I'm trying to open my camera because of technical problems I had to change the place. So it's I can see that maybe just the voice, like in the old times when we listened to radio stations, not TV. So I'm very grateful for your participation and all the voices we could hear. I think that there are some topics very important for the future and for the future generations, and our fight against global warming. First, education of younger generations. So if we start in the schools, teach the children how to make prepare the waste, keep an eye on trees, forests, and oceans. So then we will start. We will produce the perfect generation, which can keep an eye on the future of the planet. Of course, very important part from ARIC was the collaboration with local authorities. It's very important, and of course, the examples from Greece, they were inspiring us in our part of Europe, because you have maybe different tools, but the same problems as we in our fight against global climate crisis. So thank you very much for the meeting, for the discussion, for all the voices I could hear. Once again, professors, academia, and NGOs, thank you very much for a good lecture for me as a policy making or the official from the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to add.
Thank you, everybody.
Our presentation is going to be available, and whoever is interested will be happy to share it with you.
Yes. Thank you.
We're very pleased
Thank
and
you.
grateful.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye to everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.